How old is my boyfriend? We've been together for over a year and I still have no idea when he was born. I was too drunk when we met to remember what he said. Then by month 2, it felt weird to ask. The first few weeks I kept waiting for him to mention it naturally, but he never did. I tried asking which dorm he'd lived in freshman year, and he said, the one by the dining hall, which describes literally every dorm. When I pushed for specifics, he changed the subject to my classes. I figured we could study together since we were supposedly both juniors in the same major. Meet me at the new library? I texted one day. He suggested meeting at his apartment instead because the library was too crowded. When I mentioned I loved the new study rooms on the 4th floor, he agreed, which would have been fine, except there was no 4th floor. So I did what any 17-year-old girl would do in that situation. I went through his student email, or tried to. Hey babe, what's your email again? He smiled awkwardly. It got hacked in freshman year, I told you this story already. Don't you remember? An awful gut feeling washed over me, but as soon as his lips landed on mine, I forgot what we were talking about. Things got frisky, and we turned on Karate Kid to drown out the sounds of my queef. But that's when I saw it. His Netflix was on regular price. Hey, why don't you have the student price? I asked. I keep meaning to sign up, he responded before putting his hand on my thigh. Every college kid I know jumped on that the second they got their college email address. Little things started adding up. We were watching TV and gas prices came on the news. Gosh, remember when it was under $1? He said, then caught himself. I mean, my dad always talks about that, but it was the way he said it first, like it was his memory. Same thing happened when my phone died and I was complaining. At least with payphones you knew they'd work, he muttered. After that I started paying more attention to everything he said. Little slip-ups I would have missed before, but I guess he noticed because he got more careful, barely talking about the past at all. For 3 weeks it was like dating a ghost. No stories, no memories, nothing that could place him in time. The emergency happened at his place. We were cooking dinner together when suddenly my knife slipped and blood spurted everywhere. The paramedic asked about medications while bandaging him up and he just rattled off lisinopril, atorvastatin, just the usual, then stopped. Supplements. I meant supplements. I googled all of the medications that night. They were all blood pressure and cholesterol medications, typically prescribed for men over 50. I couldn't sleep after that. Every night I did the mental math in my head. If he was over 50, I was born when he was in his 30s. The thought made me so nauseous that I was literally too embarrassed to tell anyone. You've been weird lately, he said one night when I dodged his kiss. I told him I was stressed about finals. We both knew I was lying. His mom visited the next month. She looked like she was almost 80 years old. We were having wine, talking about his apartment, when she said, much nicer than the place you had when you were married to. She slapped her hand over her mouth. He went white. Mom gets confused, he said quickly, but his voice was weird. Higher. When he went to the bathroom, she leaned over and grabbed my wrist. You seem sweet, she whispered. Maybe too sweet for this. For what? I asked, but he came back and she let go. That night he was extra affectionate, and I was too young to know that it was manipulation disguised as love. Kept kissing my forehead, playing with my hair. Posted a photo of us on his Instagram story. He never tagged me, but to my 17-year-old self, it felt like true love. So much so that that night as I lay in his bougie apartment that I couldn't understand how he could afford, I let him take my innocence. Again and again. He was spooning me asleep at 2 a.m. when I got a DM from an anonymous account. Nice to see his type hasn't changed. I don't understand, I responded. That's when they sent a photo. It was my boyfriend standing next to a young woman in low-rise jeans and a butterfly top. The photo quality screamed early 2000s. That was me at 19, she wrote. He said he was 21. Found out he was 28 when his first wife showed up. Then another photo popped up. A photo of an adult, maybe 21, with his exact eyes, his same crooked smile. Never got to ask whose this was. He was gone before I could. I stared at that photo for an hour. The man looked just like him, which meant either he had a child at 8 years old, or I turned to look at him sleeping next to me. The man I'd been dating for over a year. The 21-year-old college junior who didn't know they'd torn down the old library, who took medications for age-related conditions, whose own mother had almost said ex-wife. He started to wake up. I close my eyes fast and try to make my breathing sound normal even though my heart is beating, so loud I swear he can feel it through the mattress. He shifts next to me and I force myself to stay completely still while I angle my phone screen away from him and start taking screenshots. My hands shake as I capture everything the anonymous account sent. That photo of him with the teenager in low-rise jeans burns into my brain. The adult man with his exact crooked smile stares at me from my screen. I save every single image to 3 different folders because I need proof of this. I need to know I'm not making it up. He mumbles something in his sleep and rolls over. I wait there frozen for what feels like forever until his breathing gets deep and steady again. Then I move so slowly it takes me like 5 minutes just to sit up. Every tiny sound feels huge in the dark apartment. I slide out from under the covers and my feet touch the cold floor. My jeans are crumpled next to the bed and I grab them along with my shirt and bra. My hands won't stop shaking and I have to bite down hard on my lip to keep quiet while I pull my clothes on. The zipper on my jeans sounds like a gunshot, and I freeze but he doesn't wake up. I shove my feet into my shoes without tying them and grab my bag from the chair. My phone is still clutched in my hand with those photos on the screen. I tiptoe to the bathroom and close the door as quietly as possible before I open the rideshare app. My fingers keep missing the buttons because they're shaking so bad. I finally get the car ordered and it says 5 minutes away. I stand there staring at myself in the mirror and I look exactly the same as I did a few hours ago. But everything is different now. The app pings that the car is here. I open the bathroom door and creep through the apartment to the front door. I don't look back at the bedroom. I just turn the lock slowly and slip out into the hallway and pull the door shut behind me. The driver is waiting right outside in a beat-up sedan. I climb in the back and he takes one look at my face and asks if I'm okay. I nod and tell him the address for my dorm. Tears start coming and I can't stop them, so I just turn my head and stare out the window at the empty streets. The driver doesn't ask anything else. We drive through campus and everything looks normal, like the world didn't just flip upside down. He drops me off outside my building and I mumble thanks and run inside. It's 4 a.m. and the hallways are dead quiet. I get to my room and my roommate is asleep in her bed. I grab my laptop and sit at my desk and open a new document. I start typing out every single red flag I ignored. The library with no fourth floor, the gas prices under $1 comment, the payphones comment, his medications for old people, his mom who looked 80 and almost said ex-wife. I type it all out with specific dates and details I can remember. My fingers fly over the keyboard and I fill up 3 pages because I need this documented in case he tries to tell me I'm crazy or imagining things. I need proof that this all happened. I go back to Instagram and find the anonymous account that messaged me. I type out a message asking for his full legal name. The typing bubbles show up immediately like she was waiting for me to ask. She sends back 3 words that make my stomach drop. Calvin James Gregory. Then she tells me to check voter registration records and adds that she's sorry I'm going through this too. I open a new tab and search for public records. There are websites that let you search voter registration by name and address. I type in Calvin James Gregory and the address of his apartment building. The results load and there it is. Birth year 1972. He's 52 years old. 52. The address matches his apartment exactly, so I know it's him. I sit there staring at that birth year and suddenly I can't breathe right. This is real. This actually happened. I had sex with him last night. I let him take my virginity and he's 52 years old. I'm 17 and he's been alive for 52 years. I run to the bathroom and throw up in the toilet. Everything from dinner comes up and I'm crying and throwing up at the same time. When there's nothing left, I just sit on the floor with my back against the wall. My roommate finds me there at 6 a.m. when she wakes up for her early class. She asks what's wrong and I tell her I have food poisoning. The lie comes out so easy. She brings me crackers and ginger ale from the mini fridge and then leaves for class. I go back to my room and look at my phone. There's a text from Calvin asking if I want to get breakfast. I text back that I'm sick and can't see him today. He responds right away with concern that makes my skin crawl now that I know the truth. He offers to bring me soup. I say no. My roommate is taking care of me. Please don't come over. He sends back a sad face emoji. I open the campus health center website and make an appointment for STI testing. I need to ask about emergency contraception even though we used condoms because I need to be sure. The earliest slot they have is tomorrow afternoon. Waiting that long feels impossible, but I force myself to get dressed and go to my afternoon class because I need to act normal. I sit in the lecture hall and the professor is talking about something, but I can't focus on any of it. I keep thinking about that photo of the adult man who looks just like Calvin. If that's his son and he's like 30 years old, then Calvin would have been 22 when he was born. 22. I was -5 years old when Calvin's son was born. He's been an adult my entire life. He was 35 years old when I was born. He could be my dad. The thought makes me want to throw up again right there in class. Ends and I head straight to my dorm room without talking to anyone. I lock the door behind me and open my laptop with shaking hands. My phone sits next to me on the bed and I stare at Calvin's name in my contacts for a full minute before I start typing. The message needs to be clear and direct. No room for him to twist my words or pretend he doesn't understand. I write it out in my notes app first, deleting and rewriting 3 times until I get it right. I know you're 52 and lied about everything. Don't contact me again. I'm taking steps to protect myself. I read it over and over, making sure there's nothing he can use against me. Nothing that sounds angry or emotional that he could show people to make me look crazy. My finger hovers over the send button for maybe 30 seconds before I finally press it. The message shows delivered and I immediately go to his contact and hit block. Then I block him on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, everywhere I can think of. I block his email address and then sit there staring at my phone screen. The silence feels weird, like the air pressure changed or something. Part of me feels safer knowing he can't reach me anymore, but another part keeps expecting my phone to buzz with a message that somehow got through. I set my phone face down on my desk and try to do homework, but I can't focus on any of it. The words in my textbook blur together, and I keep reading the same paragraph over and over without understanding anything. Around midnight, I text Leilani asking if she can come over, and she shows up 20 minutes later with her overnight bag and a bag of candy from the vending machine. We try to watch a movie on my laptop, but I keep checking my phone every few minutes, jumping at every notification even though they're just emails about campus events or texts from my mom asking about my classes. Leilani doesn't ask questions, just sits next to me on my bed and occasionally passes me gummy bears. I keep running through scenarios in my head, what I'll say if he shows up at my door, what I'll do if he tries to talk to me in the parking lot, whether I should have sent that message at all, or if it just made everything worse. By morning, I've barely slept, and Leilani has to leave for her early class. I check my blocked messages folder on every app, half expecting to find something, but there's nothing. The whole day passes like that, me jumping at every sound in the hallway, checking my phone constantly, feeling both relieved and on edge at the same time. Then around 9 p.m. I get an email from an address I don't recognize, just a bunch of random numbers and letters at Gmail. The subject line is blank, and when I open it, my stomach drops. It's from Calvin, a long message that starts with him saying he never technically lied, because I never asked him directly about his age. He writes that he thought I knew the whole time and didn't care, that our connection was real and age is just a number anyway. Then the message gets meaner, saying I'm overreacting because I'm young and don't understand what real love looks like. He says I led him on for over a year, and now I'm trying to ruin his life by making him out to be some kind of predator, when all he did was fall in love. The email goes on for 3 whole pages, and by the end I'm shaking. I don't respond, just forward the whole thing to Hank's email address that he gave me at the police station. I add a short message saying Calvin found a way to contact me after I blocked him everywhere. Then I block this new email address too. The next morning, Hank calls and asks me to come back to the station. Leilani drives me there and waits in the lobby while I go into Hank's office. He pulls up the email on his computer and scrolls through it slowly, pointing out specific phrases. He explains that this is called blame shifting, where Calvin is trying to make everything my fault, instead of taking responsibility for lying. Hank says the part about me ruining his life is victim language, like Calvin is the one who got hurt instead of me. Then Hank explains that I can file for a no-contact order through the courts, which would make it illegal for Calvin to contact me or come near me at all. He says the process means going to the courthouse and filling out a petition, and there will be a hearing where a judge decides whether to grant it. I might have to testify and explain everything that happened, and Calvin will be there with a lawyer probably. The thought of seeing him in court makes me feel sick, but Hank says it's the best way to protect myself legally. The next day, Leilani picks me up and we drive to the courthouse together. The building is old and smells like floor cleaner, and there are people everywhere, lawyers in suits and families sitting on benches in the hallway. We find the right office, and I tell the clerk I need to file a petition for a temporary protective order. She hands me a stack of forms and points to a table where I can fill them out. The questions ask for basic information at first, my name and address and date of birth, then they get more detailed. I have to write out what happened, why I need protection, whether Calvin has threatened me or made me fear for my safety. My hand cramps up from writing so much, but I get it all down. Every lie he told, the age difference, the email he sent after I blocked him. When I bring the forms back to the clerk, she reviews them quickly and explains that a judge will look at my petition today or tomorrow. If the judge thinks I need immediate protection, they'll grant a temporary order that lasts about 2 weeks. Then there will be a full hearing to decide on a longer order. She's nice but matter-of-fact about it, like she processes these all day long and mine is just another case. Leilani and I leave the courthouse and I feel exhausted, like I just took a 3-hour exam. 2 days go by and I'm starting to think maybe the judge denied it when I get an email from the court system. The temporary protective order was granted. Calvin legally cannot contact me or come within 500 feet of me for the next 2 weeks until the full hearing. I forward the email to campus security like the instructions say, and they respond asking me to come to their office to give them a photo of Calvin and fill out some paperwork. When I get there, the security officer is really professional about it, adding Calvin's photo to their system and explaining that even though he's not a student here, they can remove him from campus if he's spotted. For about 6 hours, I feel this huge relief, like I can finally breathe again. Then I'm walking back to my dorm from the library and I see a piece of paper taped to the front door of my building. It's not addressed to anyone specifically, just says it's a message for residents. But when I read it, I know it's from Calvin. The note talks about how actions have consequences and how people should be careful about making accusations, because everyone has things they might not want revealed. It's vague enough that he could claim it's just a general message, but the threat is clear. My hands shake as I take a photo of it with my phone, making sure to get the whole note and the door it's taped to in the frame. I call campus security first, and they send someone over to document it and remove it. Then I call Hank and send him the photo. He calls me back within an hour and says the note violates the temporary order since it's clearly directed at me even if my name isn't on it. He's going to Calvin's apartment to document the violation and warn him that any more contact will result in arrest. Later that evening, Hank texts me that he spoke to Calvin, who acted all shocked and confused. Calvin claimed he was just leaving a note for the building about general safety, not for anyone specific, and that he had no idea I even lived there. Hank didn't buy it, obviously, but there's not much more he can do until the full hearing. The next afternoon, I get a call from the campus health center saying my test results are ready. I walk over there feeling nervous, even though I'm pretty sure everything will be fine since we used condoms. The nurse brings me into her office and tells me all my STI tests came back negative and the pregnancy test was also negative. It's the only good news I've gotten in weeks, and I should feel relieved, but instead I just start crying right there in her office. She hands me a box of tissues and doesn't rush me, just sits there being patient while I cry about everything. Not just the test results, but the whole situation. When I finally stop, she tells me that none of this is my fault, that I was manipulated by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Hearing her say that helps somehow, even though I still feel stupid for not figuring it out sooner. The next day, I meet with my academic advisor because I'm so behind in one of my classes that there's no way I can catch up. I explain vaguely that I'm dealing with a personal safety issue and she's really understanding about it. She pulls up my transcript and helps me fill out the withdrawal paperwork so it won't affect my GPA. She asks if I need any other accommodations, and I say no. I think I can handle my other classes. Walking out of her office, I feel like I'm barely holding everything together, but at least I'm still here and still trying. That evening around 7 p.m., I'm walking back to my dorm from the library when I see him. Calvin is standing near the bike racks about 50 feet from my building entrance, looking at his phone like he just happens to be there. My stomach drops and I freeze on the sidewalk, trying to decide whether to turn around or keep walking. Before I can move, a campus security golf cart pulls up next to him, and Officer Lucian Holden gets out. I duck behind a tree to watch what happens. Lucian talks to Calvin for maybe 2 minutes while Calvin gestures around like he's explaining something. Then Lucian points toward the street and Calvin starts walking that direction with Lucian following in the golf cart. I wait until they're both gone before running to my dorm and locking myself in my room. 20 minutes later, Lucian calls me and explains that Calvin claimed he was just walking through campus as a public space, but Lucian escorted him off university property anyway, and wrote up a report for my protective order case. The full hearing date arrives 2 weeks later on a Tuesday morning. I put on the most professional outfit I own, which is black pants and a button-up shirt I borrowed from Leilani. She drives me to the courthouse and we sit in the parking lot for 10 minutes while I try to stop my hands from shaking. Hank meets us inside and walks us through what's going to happen. He explains that Calvin will probably have a lawyer who will try to make me look bad, but the judge will stop anything too unfair. We sit on hard wooden benches in the hallway waiting for our case to be called. Then I see Calvin walk in wearing a suit with a lawyer carrying a briefcase. He doesn't look at me, but I can feel him there, making the air harder to breathe. Inside the courtroom, everything feels too formal and scary. The judge is a woman in her 60s who looks tired. Calvin's lawyer stands up first and argues that I'm making a big deal out of nothing, that his client made an honest mistake about what I expected from the relationship. He says Calvin thought I knew his real age and didn't care. The lawyer makes it sound like I'm just mad about a breakup and trying to punish Calvin for it. Then it's my turn to testify. I have to sit in the witness chair and swear to tell the truth. My voice shakes at first but gets stronger as I talk about the lies. I explain how he avoided every question about his age, how he pretended to be a college student, how his medications were for conditions older men get, how his mom almost mentioned his ex-wife. I tell them about Jacinta and the pattern of him targeting young women. Calvin's lawyer asks me questions trying to make me seem confused or vindictive. He asks why I didn't just ask Calvin's age directly if I was so curious. Before I can answer, the judge cuts him off and says, "That's not how manipulation works." She looks at Calvin with this expression that makes it clear she's seen men like him before. The judge grants a 6-month protective order and warns Calvin that any violations will result in immediate arrest. Calvin's face stays blank, but his lawyer whispers something to him, and he nods. Walking out of the courthouse, my legs feel wobbly, and I have to hold on to Leilani's arm. The fresh air outside hits my face, and suddenly I'm crying, but also laughing a little because it's over and I did it. Leilani hugs me right there in the parking lot and asks what I need. I tell her I want ice cream even though it's freezing outside and cloudy. We drive to the place near campus that has 30 flavors, and I get 2 scoops of chocolate chip cookie dough. We sit in her car with the heat on, eating ice cream and not talking much. It feels normal and good, like maybe I can have normal and good things again. Leilani doesn't make me process everything or ask how I feel. She just sits there being my friend, and that's exactly what I need. Over the next few days, I start noticing people looking at me differently on campus. Someone must have talked because suddenly there are whispers in the dining hall, and people I barely know are sending me messages. Some are nice and supportive, saying they're proud of me for reporting it. Others are judgmental, asking why I didn't figure it out sooner or implying I should have known better. A few people even suggest I'm lying for attention. I make the mistake of checking social media and find a whole thread on the campus forum about my situation, even though no names are mentioned. People are debating whether what Calvin did was actually wrong since I was technically legal age. Reading those comments makes me feel sick, so I delete the apps from my phone. I focus on Leilani and my other real friends who actually matter, the ones who showed up and believed me. In my next counseling session with Beatrice, I tell her about the social fallout and how much it hurts. She nods like she expected this and explains that people's reactions say more about them than about me. She teaches me that I can't control what people think or say, only how I respond and who I let into my life. We work on strategies for when the anxiety hits, like breathing exercises and grounding techniques where I name 5 things I can see around me. Beatrice also helps me understand that some people will never get it because they haven't experienced manipulation themselves. She reminds me that I did everything right by documenting and reporting, and the judge believed me, and that's what matters. We practice ways to rebuild my sense of safety, like varying my routine so I'm not predictable and always telling someone where I'm going. 3 days later, Hank calls while I'm studying in my dorm. He tells me the DA's office is reviewing the case for possible criminal charges related to fraud or contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Since I was 16 when Calvin and I first met, there might be laws he violated even if the relationship itself was technically legal. Hank emphasizes that prosecution isn't guaranteed, and I shouldn't get my hopes up too much. He says these cases are complicated and DAs don't like taking them unless they're sure they can win. But they're taking it seriously and investigating, which is more than a lot of victims get. I thank him for the update, and after we hang up, I sit there feeling strange. Part of me wants Calvin to face real consequences, but another part just wants to never think about him again. That weekend, my phone rings from a number I don't recognize. I answer thinking it might be about a job application I submitted. Instead, I hear Suzanne's voice, crying and barely coherent. She's begging me to drop the protective order, saying Calvin is her son and he made a mistake, but he's not a bad person. She tells me he's depressed and not eating, and this is ruining his life. I feel this pull to comfort her because she sounds so upset, but then I remember what Beatrice taught me about boundaries. I tell Suzanne I can't talk to her about this, and I hang up. My hands shake as I block that number in my phone. I text Leilani what happened, and she comes over within 15 minutes, not even asking if I need her, just showing up. I spend that whole weekend going through my phone and laptop deleting everything related to Calvin. Every photo where we're together, every text message, every email. I save a few things in a folder for legal evidence, but delete the rest. It feels like attending a funeral for someone who's still alive, mourning the relationship I thought I had with a person who never really existed. Some of the photos are hard to delete because I look so happy in them, so sure I was in love. I remember exactly where we were and what we did that day, and now all those memories feel contaminated. Leilani sits on my bed the whole time, sometimes on her phone, sometimes just watching me. She doesn't try to talk me out of it or tell me to keep the good memories. She understands that I need to do this to move forward. The next week, Jacinta messages me asking if I want to meet in person. We pick a coffee shop that's halfway between our towns, about 40 minutes from campus. When I walk in, she's already there at a corner table, and I recognize her immediately from the photos, even though she's older now. She stands up and hugs me like we're old friends, which in a weird way we are. We order coffee and sit down, and she tells me she's been doing research. She found 2 other women who had similar experiences with Calvin in the years between her relationship and mine. One was 20 and thought Calvin was 23. Another was 18 and believed he was 21. Neither of them reported it because they felt ashamed or didn't think anyone would believe them, or didn't even know it was something they could report. Jacinta has been in contact with both of them, and they're willing to talk to investigators if it helps. She slides a piece of paper across the table with their names and contact information. I stare at it thinking about how many of us there are, how many young women Calvin has done this to over the years, and how he just keeps getting away with it. I fold the paper and put it in my pocket. Then Jacinta asks if I want to do something with this information, or just have it in case. I tell her I need to think about it, and we finish our coffee talking about other things. Normal things like her job and my classes. When I get back to my dorm, I unfold the paper and stare at the 2 names, thinking about how many of us there are. Jacinta messages me later that night asking if I want help writing something anonymous online. Not to expose Calvin specifically, but just to process what happened. She sends me a link to a relationship forum where people post about bad experiences, and I spend an hour reading through other posts before I start writing my own. I don't use any names or details that could identify Calvin or me or our town. I just write about being 17 and dating someone who lied about his age, about all the red flags I missed, about feeling stupid and used and angry. My hands shake while I type it out, and I have to stop twice because I start crying. Jacinta reads it before I post and suggests I add more about how it made me feel. So I write about the shame of not asking questions sooner, and the fear of people thinking it was my fault. I hit post at midnight and close my laptop, not expecting much. By morning, there are 12 comments, and most of them are from people who went through something similar. One woman says she was 18 when a 35-year-old man told her he was 22. Another says she was 19 dating a 40-year-old who claimed to be 25. Reading their stories makes me feel less alone and less stupid. Like this wasn't just me being naive, but something that happens to people because predators are good at lying. I screenshot some of the comments and save them in a folder on my laptop. Hank calls me on a Tuesday afternoon while I'm walking between classes. He tells me the investigators questioned Calvin last week and he denied everything, claiming we had a normal relationship and I'm only making accusations because we broke up badly. Calvin told them I knew his real age the whole time and never cared until I got mad about something else. Hank says the DA is still reviewing the case, but I need to prepare myself for the possibility that they won't file charges. The age of consent laws are complicated, and proving fraud is hard when Calvin can say I never directly asked certain questions. I feel my chest get tight and my eyes start burning, but I thank Hank for the update. He reminds me the protective order is still active, and that's the main thing keeping me safe right now. And if Calvin violates it even once, he can be arrested. I hang up and sit on a bench outside the science building, watching other students walk past living their normal lives. Part of me wants Calvin to face real consequences, but another part just wants to never think about him again. The nightmares start about a week later. I dream Calvin is sitting in the back of my history class watching me, or standing outside my dorm when I come home at night, or following me through the grocery store. I wake up sweating and have to check my phone to make sure there are no messages from unknown numbers. During the day, I jump every time I see someone with dark hair like his, and twice I almost have panic attacks in public because I think I see him. At my next appointment, Beatrice asks how I'm sleeping, and I tell her about the dreams. She says this is completely normal after what I went through, that my brain is processing trauma and trying to keep me alert to danger. She teaches me grounding techniques for when the panic hits, like focusing on 5 things I can see and 4 things I can hear. Some days are better than others. Some days I go to class and work and hang out with friends and barely think about Calvin. Other days I can't leave my dorm room because the fear is too strong. Campus security calls me in for a meeting 2 weeks later. They tell me Calvin has been spotted on university property 3 separate times, even though he's not a student or employee here. The protective order says he can't contact me, but it doesn't technically ban him from campus as a public space. So the university is implementing a trespass warning against him specifically, which means if he's found on campus again, he can be arrested immediately without needing to prove he was trying to contact me. They give me a card with the campus security number and tell me to call right away if I ever see him. I thank them and leave feeling slightly safer, knowing there's one more barrier between him and me. 3 months after the protective order was granted, I'm doing better. I still have bad days where the anxiety spikes, and I can't focus on anything, and I'm still seeing Beatriz every week to work through everything. But I'm keeping up with my classes, and I even got an A on my sociology paper. I've started trusting my own judgment again, listening to my gut when something feels wrong instead of ignoring red flags. Leilani and I decide to get an apartment together for next semester so I can move off campus and feel safer. We spend a Saturday looking at places and find a 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building with a security entrance. The rent is more than the dorms, but Leilani's parents are helping her, and I'm going to get a part-time job. We sign the lease, and I feel excited about having my own space where Calvin doesn't know the address. Hank calls again in early December. The DA has decided not to file criminal charges because of evidentiary issues and the complexity of the age of consent laws. Even though Calvin lied about his age and situation, proving criminal fraud is too difficult when I was over the age of consent in our state. Hank's voice sounds tired when he tells me, like he knew this was coming, but still wishes it was different. I tell him I'm disappointed but not surprised, and he reminds me the protective order is still in place, and I did everything right by reporting and documenting everything. After we hang up, I sit on my bed for a long time feeling empty. Part of me knew charges were unlikely, but I still hoped for some kind of justice. Leilani comes over that night with ice cream and we watch stupid movies until I fall asleep on her couch. Jacinta messages me a few days later saying she heard through someone else that Calvin moved to a different state. She thinks the protective order and trespass warning made it too difficult for him to stay here. Or maybe he just wanted to start over somewhere new where nobody knows what he did. It's not the justice I wanted, but knowing he's gone makes me feel safer walking around campus and town. I don't have to scan every crowd looking for his face or worry about running into him at the grocery store. Jacinta says she'll let me know if she hears anything else, and I thank her for everything she's done to help me. A letter arrives at my dorm in mid-December, sent through a lawyer's office. It's from Suzanne offering to pay for my counseling costs as an apology for not seeing what her son was doing. The letter is formal and doesn't include any personal message from her, just the offer of money and contact information for the lawyer handling it. I bring it to my next appointment with Beatriz and ask what she thinks. She says it's up to me, but the counseling has been expensive, and accepting the money doesn't mean I have to have any contact with Suzanne directly. I think about it for a few days and decide to accept through the lawyer. The counseling has helped me so much, and I need to keep going. And Suzanne's money can't undo what Calvin did, but it can at least help me heal from it. I start a part-time job at the campus library in January, working the front desk and shelving books. I need the money for rent, and also I need routine and normalcy in my life. My coworkers are friendly and close to my age, and they don't know anything about what happened with Calvin. To them, I'm just a regular college student with a regular student job. We talk about classes and weekend plans and which professors are the worst, and it feels good to just exist as a normal person for a few hours each shift. I like the quiet of the library and the simple tasks of checking books in and out, organizing shelves, helping people find things. It's peaceful in a way nothing else has been lately. Leilani and I move into our apartment over winter break when campus is mostly empty. Her parents help us move our stuff, and her dad installs extra locks on both our bedroom doors, even though we already have the security entrance downstairs. I decorate my room exactly how I want it with posters and plants and string lights, making it feel like my own safe space. I organize my closet and desk and bookshelf, putting everything in its specific place where I know I can find it. Having control over my environment again feels huge, like I'm reclaiming something Calvin took from me. That first night in the apartment, I lock my bedroom door and lie in my new bed looking around at my space, and I feel safer than I have in months. A few weeks later, I go back to the courthouse to file for an extension of the protective order. The clerk recognizes me from last time and processes my paperwork quickly without asking many questions. I sit in the waiting area watching other people file their own orders and restraining papers, and realize I'm not as scared as I was the first time I came here. When my name gets called, I walk into the courtroom and the judge reviews my file for maybe 2 minutes before signing the extension. 6 more months of legal protection, even though Calvin supposedly moved to another state. The judge barely looks up when she stamps the order and tells me to pick up copies at the clerk's office. I leave the courthouse with the papers in my bag feeling prepared instead of scared, like I actually know how to handle this now instead of just surviving it. I meet with my academic advisor the next week to plan my spring semester classes. She pulls up my transcript and asks what I'm thinking about for next year, and I realize I'm actually excited to talk about school for the first time in months. I tell her I've been thinking about social work, or maybe counseling because of everything that happened, and how much my counselor Beatriz helped me through it. My advisor gets this understanding look on her face and starts showing me different program options and required classes. We map out a possible major path, and she mentions internship opportunities at the campus counseling center and local nonprofits that work with young women. By the end of the meeting, I have a full schedule picked out, and I'm genuinely looking forward to my classes instead of just trying to get through them. Walking back to my apartment, I keep thinking about how I want to help other people the way Beatriz helped me, how maybe something good can come from what Calvin did. On New Year's Eve, Leilani and I stay in and order pizza and set up a movie marathon in our living room. We put on dumb comedies and action movies, nothing romantic or serious, just stuff that makes us laugh. At midnight, we pour sparkling cider into coffee mugs because we don't own wine glasses yet, and Leilani raises hers. We toast to surviving and to the future and to our apartment and to being done with terrible men. I take a sip and look around at our space with all our decorations and our stuff everywhere, and I realize I'm genuinely happy to see what comes next. I'm not the same person I was before Calvin, and I probably never will be again. But I'm stronger now, and I know how to protect myself, and I know what real friendship looks like. I know what manipulation looks like too, and I'll never miss those signs again. The year ahead feels full of possibilities instead of threats, and that's enough for right now. That's the story, and the takeaway all rolled up. I like when these stories actually spark something useful for you, even if it's just a small realization. If this one did that, it's mission accomplished. Subscribe so the next one finds you right on time.